Welcome to a show about learning technologies so powerful they transcend the boundaries of reality itself. I'm your host, Pinky Gonzalez, and this is New School VR. Welcome back, everybody. This is Pinky Gonzalez. You're listening to New School VR, and today I'm really excited to introduce Jaime Donally. She's one of those people you cannot help but find if you do any sort of internet search for anything like virtual reality in education. She's a true pioneer in this space, and I can't wait for this conversation. Jaime, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
All right, so for starters, what I like to do with some guests is really kind of start at the start and, where were you born and what's your sign and that kind of stuff. With you, I want to start in the present and figure out how we got here. From my perspective, and I think anybody who's just wading into this space, you really are the pioneer of so much of this technology in the classroom. What's a day in the life for you right now, and sort of where are we in the grand scheme of things when it comes to virtual reality and the educational process?
Sure. I think that, with virtual reality, I think it all kind of stemmed from augmented reality, where I was in the classroom. I never got to use these tools, which I'm so bummed about, because that was really where it should be. Sharing this with teachers is so much fun. It's exciting, but getting the opportunity to go into a classroom and help implement these types of tools was just, that's really the passion behind it. So while everybody else gets to go out and actually do it with their class the next day, I'm twiddling my thumbs waiting for them to share what they got to do with their students. But on my end with virtual reality, I really had been sharing and engaged in presenting on augmented reality quite a bit. In early 2015, started running across some options with virtual reality, and really just immediately that idea of virtual reality was like, we got to have this in education. There was not a whole lot of resources out there, and it just took a whole lot of digging back then to get anything up and going. And it wasn't actually within I want to say about 2 months into it, I created a series for atomic learning, and created a virtual reality series on how to implement that into the classroom, which was really, really early on. Many people were not thinking about virtual reality at all, and they really weren't even thinking about it in education. So some of the tools used are really already outdated. They're just not, either they've changed significantly because there's funding now involved, or there's new tools out there that are engaging, or they're just not there altogether at all because somebody else just took their place so quickly. So at the time, it was a great series to offer, and now I'm looking to modify it and adjust it and change it to really include both augmented and virtual reality for the mixed reality experiences as well.
Boy, there's a lot to unpack in all of that. For starters, what are some of those early titles or experiences that are now becoming old school, shall we say?
Yeah. It's funny because I've been sharing some different tools. I'm going to go to my Symbaloo WebMix here while we're talking, because I'm thinking, oh my gosh, what stuff did I share back then? But really looking at some of the tools, of course, Google Cardboard was a talk, and it was more of a talk about jokingly as opposed to realistically using something like that in the classroom. It was more so just these experiences, but not necessarily tied to education per se. Sphere is an app out there. It's a 360 photography app that you were able not just to look around, but also create. And so I had been sharing Sphere forever, not ever tying it into this virtual reality concept. I actually shared Sphere often when I shared augmented reality. I kind of tied the two together already, not thinking ahead about where it's at now. So, Sphere is one of those that now you try to use it and it's just not supported at all. You really can't get any support. I shared initially early on in 360 Tube, kind of a workaround with YouTube. that allowed classrooms to experience some of the 360s in the classroom, but not have to see all the ads and recommended videos and everything else that comes with YouTube that is more of our problems. So I created a playlist and said, hey, go in there, use N360 Tube, let's do a workaround. And it wasn't very long before that really became outdated and just not able to handle everything just swarming in. So maybe they'll pick it up and both companies will make some adjustments. But those are some that we all start off with a roller coaster and immediately realize this is not okay. I'm never doing the roller coaster again. But, it was moving past that and really how does that apply in our classrooms? How is this relevant to our standards? And so that was kind of that adjustment period of the enthusiasm, excitement, and I'm experiencing to now I really feel like I'm focused on finding the tools to create.
That's outstanding. What inspired this in you? What's your background in education?
Yeah. Well, I think I'm a risk taker. So anything that is kind of out there just starting these, I think anybody experiencing augmented or virtual reality looks at just the wow factor, right? We're all just, whoa, no way I can, and my family hears that a lot. No way. No way, because I'm always just exploring. And I'm not waiting around for somebody else to write about it. I'm typically researching it before it's really even out there yet and just kind of watching and trying to get familiar with the tools so that when they do come out, it's like, okay, this is legitimate. This is something that we should be using. These are some of the good, pros and cons of it. But I think that just in using virtual reality for me, I was a math teacher. And so how does that really apply in the classroom with math? But I went into instructional technology, and that was never just, hey, all you're connecting with is math. And so it really required me to think outside of that math, background and saying, okay, well, how am I going to support social studies? How am I going to support language arts and all the other subjects? And typically, initially, I was assigned to middle school, and then it went broader to different districts. I was over everybody, K-12, preschool through 12th, really, and then every subject. So how do you support that? And I think virtual reality offers things that have never been a possibility before this technology came along. Many times the districts that I've been in, I work with, teachers that are working with severe poverty-stricken, areas. So we have these students that have never been outside of their little town. And so giving them the opportunity to have any type of experience, even if it's not a real sitting in the sand experience, it's an experience that they've never had, because watching it on video is one thing, but actually be engaged and completely immersed in that experience is another. I have a funny story, and I don't know if this is a good time to share it or not, but
As good a time as any.
Okay.
Let's do it.
So I was working with a first grade classroom, and we were looking at some dinosaurs, and we had a setting where the teacher had set up different stations, and I was one of those stations. So they would come and they would explore some virtual reality. So the kids, every time I'd pop in that classroom, they were like, oh, we're going to have fun. They get all pumped up and the energy, and then discipline issues, so we had to calm them down and get ready. So this little guy was so excited. He was clear on the other side of the room when we started. And by the time it was his turn to come up to that station, he could have just screamed. He was so excited. So he's running up to me, and he's ready to get started. And I put on the viewer on him, and he starts exploring, this dinosaur. And these dinosaurs are running around him, and he's flying up in the sky with this dinosaur. So he's going through this experience. And the first thing I notice is he's putting out his hands. Of course, we see that a lot. Their hands are out there trying to touch. Can I touch this? And then the next thing you know, he's walking across, the room with this viewer on, no view of where he's walking. And I grab him, and I'm kind of chuckling. Okay, calm down. That's silly. Let's stay right here. And I look back over again. There he walks off again. Third time he's walking off again. And I finally had to say, look, buddy, if you keep walking off, you're going to hit a table. You're going to hit somebody. This is not good. If you keep doing this, I'm going to have to take it away. So few short minutes later, his experience is over. He walks up. He walks up and says, so I want to ride that dinosaur. And I kind of laugh and yeah, that would be, an experience. Good thing they're extinct. I don't think they'd be too thrilled about you riding them. And he's like, yeah, yeah. So anyways, I want to ride that dinosaur. So I'm like, okay, let's just run with this. This kid has one heck of an imagination. So, I'm like, well, how do you know that that dinosaur won't want to come up and bite you or eat you? I mean, do you feel safe with that dinosaur? And he said, no, he's a good dinosaur. He let me pet him. And in his mind, he literally was petting that dinosaur in that experience. And he had made a connection where he felt like that dinosaur was going to be safe enough to ride. So it was just a real eye-opening experience for me because, sometimes for us as adults, we can connect the fact that this is real and this is not real. But the power of virtual reality is much more powerful than we're given it credit for. Mm-hmm. Our bodies respond. Even if we know we're sitting in there, if somebody comes up to your face in virtual reality, you step back. I mean, it's just a natural response to do that. So for us to recognize the opportunity we have with our kids and using this and engaging them in learning is so much more powerful than we ever had before.
Amen. Wow, that is you're preaching the gospel, sister.
It's not so powerful.
So on the other side of this issue is this question about when is old enough for kids to do this, and I hear of the detractors there are two basic things that you typically hear. One is, well, their eyes are still developing and we don't know that this is safe, so I wouldn't risk my kid on it, but if you want to be a bad person, go for it. And then the other is kids don't separate what they're seeing from the real world, and it could cause trauma or other psychological damage. I think both of those are an extreme position personally, but those are kind of the pushbacks that you see. What's your personal philosophy on where and how to use these things at a first grade level, for example?
I think that always starting off, as excited as I am about it, and the teachers are excited about it when you're sharing this with them, they're ready to use it the next day, which is awesome. And I love that. But oftentimes when we're trying to use any technology, we're excited about the technology, so we make our standards or our classrooms meet our technology, which I think is really backwards. We need to find out what we need in technology before we jump into any tool. So really looking at and analyzing your standards and what piece of technology is going to help meet those standards that you wouldn't have otherwise. So I would say not always using virtual reality is the option that we should go with. It could be a great option for certain experiences and certain opportunities for learning and definitely meeting those standards that we have, but not all of them. So I think that, having a good balance is key. And I don't think that, as much as I hear the concerns of, while I get really dizzy, I actually gave a session at one point where there was a teacher watching another teacher do this, and she got sick to her stomach watching her. I'm like, that's pretty bad. That's pretty bad. I think we're going to face that in any technology, right? iPads. My husband still says, don't put that in your lap. There's definitely concerns in the technologies that we're using, but I think to be so hyper against and fearful of what those technologies can do really limits our students, not so much our teachers and not so much the classroom, but really giving our students the opportunity to learn for their future is critical. And so by limiting them in those experiences, if you have concerns, then limit those, opportunities. It doesn't mean you eliminate them. And you grow in that. Take some baby steps and see the benefit and see if it outweighs your fears, So I think most of the time we're running across teachers that don't want to use it, and they don't want to use any technology. So they'll come up with, every reason why it shouldn't be used. But most of the time you have teachers that really want to use it, and they're hearing those people, those naysayers, and it brings those fears, and they just need to know that there's fears in everything we do in the classroom, but it doesn't mean we do nothing in the classroom. So, you've got to balance it out.
Wow, that's a big statement.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right on the money. Holy moly, I want to take that in three different directions all at one time. um, let's talk about some of these specific experiences and hardware at this point. You mentioned that some of those early things that you were digging into are now a little long in the tooth. What are you into right now? And is there kind of a perfect grade level for where this stuff begins to become a useful tool, or is it all over the spectrum?
I think that it is all over the spectrum. I think that understanding how much your kids are immersed into it would probably be grade level specific. I don't really necessarily think that there's an age with a time frame or anything, but I think that our students that are developing these virtual reality experiences are obviously going to spend an enormous amount of time creating. So their immersion into this, virtual reality world is going to be a lot more significant than a first grader who's just experiencing it. So I think that there's different ways and time that we can look at that. As far as the tools go, I mean, every day we're seeing something new. And that's what I love about virtual reality is that this is such a new technology that is really just, there's no bad yet, I mean, well, let me take that back. There's some bad. There's definitely some bad. But when it comes to our educational apps right now, looking at virtual reality, the risk that people are taking to provide these only give us more opportunity to perfect those. So we're seeing things like Google Spotlight stories, which I really love in storytelling. I can't say I'm a huge fan of Google Expeditions. That seems to be the norm. That's just not something I think when you're talking about Google, you expect something that you never can comprehend. And I feel like they have not hit the mark in that area with Expeditions. Of course, it's a tool that I let people know is out there, but I don't necessarily want people in my sessions to go and experience that just because I feel like there's so many incredible tools out there that they can implement that are pushing the limits of virtual reality. So Google Spotlight Stories does a great job. And I think what they have honed in on, though, is storytelling and how that will really change in the way that our kids understand any content, so we're looking at our textbooks evolving. We're looking at sharing of our, a report changing in that way. So anything that you can imagine really with storytelling, I mean, that we all have a story to tell. So whether that be academic, whether that just be a personal story, whether that be blogging or podcasting, right? So any of those things in our virtual reality world, I mean, you could take what we're talking about right now and completely express that in a virtual world. So I think Google Spotlight Stories really hones in on that. Adorable is another really cool one that's coming out. Lots of things that they're trying to develop right now, and it's really just beginning. But looking at, connecting and through beyond our borders, I am really passionate. I've started something called EdCamp Global, and then went into now it's called Ed Change Global. We're having a classroom event, but we connect classrooms all over the world, and we connect teachers all over the world. And I say we're connecting, we're really not. We're just giving it a day and they're joining in. But these classrooms of how they're collaborating through video chat, maybe Skype or Google Hangout or Periscope or maybe Twitter chats or however they're connecting, we've just pretty much just given an opportunity for them to do that on a day. However, Adorable does the next level, and that is let's chat, let's talk, let's collaborate, but let's do that through avatars. So let's go in this three-dimensional world. Well, he created these breakout rooms and just really had some cool stuff to offer. It's really too big for its britches right now. I feel like right now, app-wise, it's massive. So, VTime is kind of doing the same thing. Like you're looking at over a gigabyte download, which is just too much, so, but it's the pioneers right there that are getting started with the concept of what are we going to do with virtual reality that really do something that we've never had before. And, Second Life has been doing it forever, but they've never been academic. So to really look at it from the perspective of a classroom setting, it's fantastic. And I have to mention one more because, well, let me just say a few more. Nearpod, very easy implementation of virtual reality with 360 photographs. Super easy. Anybody can do that. RoundMe can take what you create, maybe in Google Street View, and load it in there. And then you have hotspots. You kind of have these portals going from one spot to the other, but I love Drown Me that you can actually share it very easily on social media without somebody actually having to go and find it in Google Maps. And then CoSpaces is the one that I just want to touch on. And that one is doing some pretty phenomenal things because we're looking at these experiences, which are fantastic, but these students are creating their VR worlds and they're telling stories and they're sharing knowledge and they're making connections to learning. And that right there, I think, is just on the money. That is where we need to be and getting our kids engaged. Now, we all start off with experiences, but we need to move to creation, and CoSpaces is doing that right now.
Wow, that's another just perfect quote. We all start off with experiences, but we need to move to creation. And I think that is one of the greatest challenges for perhaps the non-technical teacher, or certainly the non-VR experienced educator. How do we, it's one thing just to know about this stuff. I think there are few people on the planet that are as up to the second on what's out there, how it's used, where, in what ways it's different than the competition than you are. If I'm the teacher right now, any sort of VR is probably going to be ahead of my peers, or at least many of them. Mm-hmm. And so there's one more chasm there, which is how do I go from just putting on a viewer and looking around a still photo and seeing something as if I were there, which is cool, mm-hmm. but to then create something, that's just a huge leap forward. And I think you're totally right about CoSpaces. We were really fortunate to have Suzanne Kraus on the show a couple of weeks ago, and they really seem to understand the role of creating a virtual space. It doesn't have to be fully gamified and beginning, middle, and an end. Just spending time creating an environment based on something you might be reading or studying, even if it's vocabulary or otherwise things that you don't necessarily think about VR as being a natural fit for the way you might, drawing or painting or these sorts of things. Wow, what a great tool. So way to cover some ground there for sure.
Too much ground.
Yeah. Well, geez, it's all happening so fast now. To that end, what are your thoughts about the Google Daydream and where it sort of fits in sort of the cardboard versus Vive world that we're in right now?
Okay, so when the Pixel was announced, the Google Pixel, I was sitting there watching the advertisements going, oh my word, I have my iPhone 7 Plus getting shipped to me and I'm waiting for it. And what did I just do? So it was that first time of realizing, and to be honest, in all fairness, I love my iPhone and I share everything pretty much Apple. I mean, I have a MacBook. I share iPads. I, use my iPhones. All my family is on Apple until virtual realities come into the scene. And I feel like that they're just trying to catch up, and maybe they got this, really great secret that they've been holding on to that they keep hinting at, but never shows up. But I feel like Google has been ahead of the game in so many ways. So looking at, the Android market. So the Pixel came out or was announced, and I started twiddling my thumbs. Do I go back and, say, scratch that? Just kidding. I want the Pixel. But I decided to stick with the iPhone. And one of the main reasons is what's available in our classrooms. In our classrooms, they don't have iPods. And they don't have, they don't have a mobile device per se. They might do a little bit of BYOD, but that's really hard to get everybody on board doing that. That's just not realistic to ask students to share their devices. I think we'll run into some big problems in that area. But in light of that, we can't say, hey, only half of my class gets the experience because only half of them have mobile devices either. So looking at what is available, what purchases are being made in the classroom, and what we're seeing is, iPads or tablets of sorts, right? Chromebooks. We're witnessing what's to come in our classrooms. That's the investment that's been made. So I wanted to stick with an iPhone really because I felt like that was going to be where our classrooms are at. However, having a chance to kind of talk to a few folks, Jorge from California, he is doing some really cool stuff. I think he's from California. I'm almost positive he is. But he's a physical education teacher, and he purchased the Pixel. And to just kind of hear where, what is this Daydream? As soon as I saw the viewer, I was like, oh, I'm glad I didn't go down that route.
Ah, interesting.
It's super. So oftentimes, what I'm sharing with teachers is cardboard is a great concept. We know that it's cheap. I can get them for $1. I can, and I share them. I just bought 50 for my presentations coming up at FETC and TCEA, and I'm sure I'll buy more for ISTE. But it's like I definitely want to share this out. But that's an individual situation. We can't expect our kids to share something like that. It's on their faces. You have a lot of things that you cannot disinfect. And so that's not for the safety reason. No, even, we know it won't stay sturdy forever, but, even still, every kid needs to have their own. So I always talk about plastic for the disinfectant part of it. And I think that's where I look at the viewer and say, I would not recommend that for a class. Personal use, yes. And I love the fact that I hear that it's comfortable, and that's great. But I think when it comes down to it, do I really want to have my sweaty forehead on this long term? And how do you wash that? How do you clean that? So for me, I as soon as I saw it, I was like, okay, I went down the right road on that end. I do like that you can use a controller, which is not really a possibility right now with Apple. And so we're running into the fact that that's a limitation that needs to be overcome. But, I think in the end, when, the creation opportunities in Daydream, I have not looked into a whole lot. I have an Android tablet that I kind of watch through, but I don't have a Pixel. And so I can't necessarily experience those experiences. But I've heard they're pretty cool and they're great experiences. Do I think that there should be an investment in that area just for those experiences right now? I'm not a big fan of having a separate marketplace. So, when it comes to the Oculus Rift or HTC Vive, which are really cool tools, ultimately, if it's not going out to the masses and universally, like we have in the Android market with Google Play or the App Store, I try to say that's an option, and those are cool experiences. But do I really want to invest my time into something like that? Probably not, because that's not where our classrooms are at. So,
Wow.
Big story. Sorry.
No, that's I'm almost speechless because these are some really important topics we've not really had a chance to cover in depth on this show yet, being relatively new. But what technology is in the classroom right now? If I'm going to be investing in future technologies, as somebody in every school district has that responsibility. Am I looking to add a VR lab where there are several high-end units that classes kind of come into and experience once a week, or am I looking more for the Daydream or equivalent kind of experience where every student has a handheld device that they can use anytime that they want? It's just not that simple, right? Like it's not an easy choice right now. And if you're a developer, which, we need this whole ecosystem, we've got lots of investment on the hardware side from the companies that have made their billions and trillions of dollars providing a whole range of technologies from desktops to refrigerators and beyond.
Sure.
So, they add VR to that list and hope it pans out, but aren't going to expect it to be the cash cow for some time. Whereas if you're a software developer, you really have to focus on what is the market, what's needed, what's the price point, who has the ability to use these technologies, and then you have to decide what not to develop for, because not everything is going to work equally on every kind of device. Mm-hmm. If you were making a software title right now, what might you focus on?
I definitely would not focus on those other, stores. I would certainly focus on where our classrooms are at right now. I'm kind of a rebel in this area when it comes to expeditions. Best Buy last summer announced, oh, we got this great, package that we're going to put together so that you can do these expedition programs. And wow, it's 30 different devices and you'll cut, a case, la da da. Mm-hmm. Didn't give you any specifics about the devices. Mm-hmm. So I was kind of waiting, and immediately it was like, this is not okay. $10,000. That is not okay. That, how many schools are going to do that? I'll tell you, it's not very many. And so if you're thinking about selling $10,000 worth of product, I'm going to tell you right now, everybody I talk to, whether it be principals or districts or teachers, instructional technologist, I'm absolutely advising against it. One is you're getting an Android device that's really off. It's not a known device. It's not something that it's going to last very long. And you don't have cases for those devices. So what are people looking at? They're only looking at virtual reality in this Viewmaster. Okay, I don't recommend spending over $20 for your viewer. I mean, there's so many options out there for less than $20 that hold everything that it needs. So, looking at price point as far as that goes, I would certainly go with an off-brand. I mean, that's a cheap purchase. We're making a big deal out of viewers, which shouldn't be such a big deal. It's the devices that should really be a big deal. And that seems to be a very little piece of what was highlighted with this whole Best Buy purchase. And I think that's a huge piece. So what's happening is the school districts are purchasing these sets, and they're buying one for a whole district, and then they're letting it float. Okay, that's great. So who's charging it? Oh, well, you better get somebody that's overseeing this, who's really excited about this. Okay, that instructional technologist, yeah, they're going to take care of it. Who's going to bring it to those classrooms? Whoever signs up. Oh, who's managing the calendar? Who's going to train on how to use this? And so all of a sudden you find you have this one person that used to just, oversee a whole district using all different types of technology to now managing this set and making sure people get this one experience for one day using Google Expeditions so that they can share it across the board. It's the most insane thing I've ever heard. So, it's just one of those things where, to me, I'm actually trying to put together a similar set that you can get better products. So iPods with cases. Let's look beyond just virtual reality. There's so many different ways you can implement those tools, and really looking at the cost point of that. And I cannot see it going over, between $5,000 and $7,000 capped. So I don't know how they came up with $10,000. But I will tell you that it's really the way that you implement it. You have to have a plan. And I do not recommend 30 devices in a classroom. I just don't. I think one, our networks are not made for that. I know they come with their own router, but so just Expeditions will that function. So looking at all these other resources that we want to use for virtual reality, forget it, scratch that. Wow. That case, So then you're like, okay, well, wait a minute. What if we want to experience some video, 360 videos? Well, you know what? Our networks are not set up like that at schools to really handle more than 5. 5 is really pushing it. So if you're looking at them running these 360 videos all at the same time, have it set up to where 5 are in the classroom. So, right now, look into the future. I do not recommend more than 5 in a classroom, just because of what we can handle and the implementation of using it. Give the power to the teachers, separate that set, allow them all to benefit, and let them, and through their excitement and engagement, let them jump head first into this instead of having somebody manage all of these pieces and giving one experience. So I'm sorry that's a big answer, but I think I am really passionate about it in this area because people are jumping into this not realizing what they're jumping into.
Yeah, and you're so specific, Jaime. This is what is really hard to find right now. And this is from a person who spends many hours every week trying to pay attention to what's going on in the VR and AR assisted learning space. And I'm not coming across these specifics, 5 devices in a classroom, and be mindful of bandwidth and, what that experience is and who's going to manage this thing. Those are the important issues to address, both, especially if you want to get into the space and be developing content or providing hardware for this stuff, know your enemies,
right?
Right. Know the obstacles that you're going to face. But also as a teacher, we all, we want the best for our students. We want to have, technology assisted experiences that go beyond what we could just talk about and wave our hands in the air and do our best to illustrate. Why wouldn't we use these things?
Sure.
But then how? We really need some of these very specific recommendations. We need to know what that, what's a starting budget, and then what are some of the experiences beyond Expeditions that are worth incorporating or at least learning more about to make a decision for yourself. So this is incredibly valuable advice. Are there any subjects that you think are not yet well served by the existing app market?
I think, with augmented and virtual reality, there's ways to implement maybe some math in there. I think it's harder to find the opportunities for a direct connection with our standards in math. And so, with that being said, I want to say that one's always been a little tricky for me. I mean, we could talk about shadows and we could talk about Pythagorean theorem, but we can go outside and look at shadows. We don't necessarily have to have this tool and this technology to do that. And there's some augmented reality tools out there that help them with math, help support the learning there. But I think typically coming from math background, this is one of those areas that it's like, there's definitely some things that we can share and you can be creative, but it's not obvious. So it's more difficult. I think it's really important for teachers to have lesson plans available to them. I created a few lesson plan ideas to implement at the lower level and then middle and then upper level. So how can they really take all three of these experiences that we're looking at and how can it be applied? And I left it general enough to where it's just creating an opportunity for creative thinking, higher level thinking, cooperation, and problem solving. So you're applying all of those things, but not necessarily targeting a specific standard. So, yeah, I would say math is one of the more challenging. I don't know how much you've seen what I've done beyond just the chat, but I've created a Spark page that just outlines all of these different resources that I've been trying to compile. Because when I go out and share, if I'm just having you experience this, you're never going to apply it. But if you have some opportunity to see the lesson plan ideas and run with it and customize it, you're more likely to implement it. And so, I have a Google Cardboard is what I've titled it. So we're looking at virtual reality experiences, a web mix in Symbaloo. And I also have one for augmented reality. And initially I came into this thinking all VR and everybody kept giving me kickback saying, AR, AR too, let's talk about that. And so I kind of had to revamp that. So AR, VR, and EDU is one area that I'm really kind of targeting to get the word out and bringing those experiences and opportunities for learning. But I often share the web mix, and there's so many options on there that they can really run with it in a million different directions. There's no wrong way. And I've also written a blog post for Atomic Learning where it talks about implementing virtual reality. What are 10 things that you can do now? And we have tablets in our classroom. So let's take those tablets and let's use those tablets to use these tools. So you don't got to go out and buy something expensive. You don't have to wait around for this to finally come out. But now, hey, let's take what we have right now, apply it right now, get your kids going now. And then when those new tools come out, you'll be ready for it.
Totally. Okay, so for starters, for anybody that's listening that wasn't already in the loop prior to today's show, AR, VR, and EDU is the hashtag on Twitter. And as always, we'll make sure that there are links to all of these great resources on newschoolvr.com. Jaime, you mentioned the Spark page. Is there a short URL or an easy way to get there?
Yeah, it's tiny.cc/AR, VR, and EDU.
Beautiful. And that's, we're going to have all of the resources that Jamie's describing right now. Tell us about the chat. What is that format? How does that work, and who tends to be involved in that?
Sure. So it's mainly teachers. I want to say mainly secondary teachers, actually. We have some lower level teachers, but I think that mainly the secondary teachers are the ones that are actually implementing the creation. So they're working on, creating three-dimensional objects and working within the coding spaces. We have some of those folks joining in. We have some teachers that have never even thought about augmented or virtual reality that are jumping in, that are just probably a little overwhelmed, because I think most of the teachers that are joining in have used something in the past and have some sort of connection. And then we have, kind of a mix in between. But so we have just a variety of people joining in. And I will honestly tell you that starting this chat has been something I've been trying to do for a long time. And it wasn't until I finally just said, I'm going to come up with an excuse of why I can't do this right now for the rest of my life. But ultimately, there has to be a space out there for people to talk about what tools are coming out, what's available, And my whole point of this chat is to really transform what a chat looks like. Getting on and regurgitating the same information every week is not my goal. It's great to talk about this stuff for people jumping in, but mainly I want it to be very interactive and an experience. So when they leave, they have, they've experienced something, or they've created something, or they've engaged in a new tool that they've never used before. So I really tie in gaming. I pull them out through maybe Nearpod, or pull them out and round me. So I'm constantly pulling them away from Twitter and then pulling them back in with questions so that they're going out and experiencing at the same time.
So I admit to having a really good time the first time I had a chance to participate in the chat.
Was it the gaming one?
It was where
where I won everything. That was great.
Yeah, not rigged at all. Hashtag.
I think that was the funnest chat I have ever been in, ever. I mean, I was sitting back just laughing so hard the whole time.
Oh
and
gosh.
It's so funny because I think Kahoot is a very much a classroom sit down, let's use this. And I was trying to use a newer feature in Kahoot. So people were understanding the concept of what I was doing. And then in addition, we were running into the fact that we were all seeing different screens and people weren't winning. And it was just hilarious. So I ended up giving out prizes to everybody that just stuck through it, like, all right, let's just give you all shirts.
So good. So for those that are interested in jumping in next time, this is a weekly chat event. It happens at 6 p.m. Pacific time. You'll find it on Twitter with the hashtag ARVRNEDU. Again, I'll make sure that there are links to that on the website. Jaime, do you have a preferred web app or otherwise for participating in a Twitter chat that for people who may not have done this sort of thing before?
I think joining in, so Participate used to be called Participate Learning. They have some great resources because joining in there through the chat allows you to see all the resources that have been shared up until this point.
Oh, cool.
And so you can go back and kind of reference back to. As far as joining in the chat, that's one way. I've seen people use various tools, but honestly, I am pushing the boundaries of Twitter chat. So, if you've never done a Twitter chat, it might be best to start off with a different Twitter chat just because this particular one is asking you to know Twitter and to jump right into another tool often. Not all the time, but often. Mm-hmm. And so because I'm pushing that boundary, I think we got a different group of people, but those group of people are so on the ball and they just keep coming back because they're just so excited to learn more. So it's been a great experience.
That's fantastic. I imagine you probably learn a lot of what you know and continue to discover through this group. Are there other resources that are really valuable for you as you continue to explore this terrain?
Yes. I often do searches for apps and I'm looking at the latest, like what's happened in the past week, what's been released, looking at, tying into, even if it's not educational, how that can be. So if there's tools out there that aren't necessarily educational focused, I try to connect with a company and put a little, thought into their minds like, hey, this could be educational. Have you thought about how this could be applied in the classroom? And so trying to just really give these resources and make them applicable for the classroom. And really my job is just to get people aware and just create a resource. And I'm constantly looking and I'm always out there searching. But hearing and collaborating. We also have a Voxer group. I don't know if you use Voxer.
I have not.
Okay, so it's like a walkie-talkie app, and education-wise, it's really becoming a new norm as far as how we collaborate. Because, typing on a chat and Twitter, but hearing your voice, Pinky, is different, right? So I love that Voxer allows us to collaborate through audio. And that group has been going since December 2015.
Cool.
And they have been we collaborate in there. We talk about the latest things coming out. We learn a lot from each other. And I love just the dynamic of the group, how the various, levels of where everybody's at with augmented and virtual reality. But you're welcome to join us if you wanted to hop on.
I'm down. Consider me in.
Awesome.
How about conferences? You're extremely active on the on that circuit, shall we say. What are the sort of go-to events for you each year?
Yeah, so trying out FETC next week for the first time. That's a Florida technology conference out there. They've been doing some really cool things with some trending technologies. I'm excited to grow and kind of see what's happening with, virtual reality. I think I see the same things over and over, and it's a little bit of a bummer. But I think, and it is. I mean, everybody kind of says, oh, expedition. They're all kind of pushing Google Cardboard. And those are great. And I'm not, there's nothing against that, but it's just, what other things? And maybe they're targeting an area with somebody that's never seen it, and that's what they need to see. Whereas I'm looking more towards who has already seen that, who's ready to go to the next level and really apply this in a different way. But, for me, I'll be sharing augmented and virtual reality playground, and I'll also be doing some gaming stuff. And then I'll be going to TCEA a couple weeks later, which is our technology conference here for all of the technologists and classroom teachers and administrators, and sharing 8 different sessions. It's going to be intense, but lots of it is actually geared around virtual reality and really innovative thinking. And I love that I'll be doing a session there that will allow them to come in. It will be a workshop where they'll come in and they'll start creating. So I'm excited about that piece because, sharing it and the excitement, that's always going to be there, but giving people a chance to explore with the support of somebody being there to help them is really fun. And then, of course, ISTE. I'll be sharing something every day at ISTE. I'm part of a couple different PLNs, one of them being the 3D network community. So being part of that PLN has been really great, helping to kind of form what that will look like as far as support, what we'll be doing at ISTE. And ISTE is the one that, nationwide that everybody really desires to go to in the instructional technology world. So that one, I'll be sharing lots of VR stuff. Last summer, had a chance to do an Ignite session where I stood up there for 5 minutes and talked about virtual reality.
Nice.
And it was probably the worst presentation I've ever done in my life.
Well, at least you kept it to 5 minutes.
It was pretty embarrassing, but it was a learning experience, and I took the risk, and it was hilarious. But anyways, those types of things that happen. But you go out there, you're sharing this new stuff, and I think people are really excited to hear what's happening.
Yeah, I feel very fortunate to be just getting into this stuff at a time when the hardware is, well, you've had a certain generation of hardware, cardboard, and to some extent Gear VR has been in the market long enough for people to have heard about it, to have maybe seen it or tried it. But it really was, the latter half of 2016 that this just huge explosion of press and media, and then just recently with the major technology conference we were at.
CES.
CES, geez, wow. It's Friday. I don't know if
I know.
you're aware.
I want to go to
Friday.
that. I haven't been to that yet, so that's on my to-do.
It's a giant festival of innovation and technology, and this year was, all about VR and AR, and 35 plus new headsets were announced, and just, crazy. But point being, it is still so brand new, so it's difficult to, get your bearings and figure out what's possible, and, are there best practices and standards, and who's talking about that stuff. And for you to have been involved in this now for years already, you kind of are the Sherpa. You really are an important beacon for those that are interested either in getting into the space or just staying up to speed on the latest, greatest, stuff. So thank you for all of the work that you're doing out there.
Oh, I'm just a learner like the rest of you all. So it's not necessarily that I know everything. I don't, I'm learning. Like I said, in that Voxer group, I'm learning from everyone all the time. But I really am an enthusiast in this area. So I spend a significant amount of time focusing on this, whereas other people are focusing maybe on a different area. So I just have, I think, more time focused in on these areas, but not necessarily an expert. I'm not a coder. I'm not a developer. I'm not, I'm just so, I'm just a learner. I'm just pulling together the resources that have been created and just excited to share them.
It's just fantastic. I'm glad that you are. we,
Thank you.
we need it in the mix here for sure. Lastly, tell us what's your day job, Jaime? What's a day in the
Yeah.
life, and tell us what you do at Atomic Learning.
I just sit at home.
Just chat on the internet all day long.
Well, actually, I was in a school district doing instructional technology, and I had been doing contract work with them, creating modules and series for a little while. And going through this process, at some point, I was contacted asking if I'd be interested in applying for a marketing position. Which at the time I kind of chuckled and said, I don't know, did they send this to the right person? Was this a mass email? Like, what's going on here? And then, then saying, well, this isn't me. I'm an educator. I'm not in marketing. And the person that I spoke to is now my boss. She said, well, actually you are. Let's look at all these events that you've been doing, your virtual events with EdCamp Global and Global Maker Day. And you've been marketing. That's exactly what you've been doing. And so I think looking back at that really helped me recognize that beyond just education, that there was some marketing involved. So in light of that, I joined the marketing team, but I'm not like any other marketer, I guess is what I'm saying. They want me to go out and still present. And so do you want me to go out and present on Atomic Learning? No. Keep sharing learning. That's what we're geared towards. We want people to learn and grow. And so that's been really exciting because I get to still connect on my passions and my interest in this area. And it really hasn't hindered me as far as being in the, district setting. I would have to wait and do everything that I did in the evening, which consumed a lot of my time. Whereas with Atomic Learning, it just is all one piece. So I'm doing all of their social media with Twitter and LinkedIn and Facebook. And then I'm also building an ambassador program, which is just the best part of all of this, is building a team of folks that I get to learn and grow with. And then also just being a piece of, how do you approach conferences, having experience as an educator walking through that vendor hall. So just kind of giving feedback in that area and helping to support how to go out and share the tools that we have. So it's been really neat working from home. It's been an adjustment period, but I love the fact that I have the flexibility to still go to conferences and connect with people, and I wouldn't have had the same type of opportunity without it.
Amazing. Where is Atomic Learning based?
They're in Minnesota, and I'm here in Texas. So that was another funny thing is I was like, do you have the right person? And then two is I'm not moving to Minnesota. We're just fine here in Texas.
What's the temperature there today? I'm curious.
Oh, well, I guess yesterday it wasn't bad. They were in the 40s, so they were all excited about that. But I stay in contact like we are right now through video chats and through it's funny, I feel more connected that way than I have ever felt in my life. I feel closer to some people that I maybe haven't even met face to face than I did when I was working next to them every day,
Wow.
to other people. So it's just a different world that we're in now. And there's great opportunities to, especially with virtual reality that we have that we've not had before.
For sure. Oh my gosh. This is a lot to digest. One of my favorite responsibilities with the podcast, even though it's very time consuming, is to go back and edit and listen to these interviews and make sure that every individual that is mentioned is given a link on the site and these different applications. This one's going to take a while. It will be done still on time. You have my word, but this is a lot. I think this will be the 8th show published, and this will be one of the most dense in terms of very specific applications to take a look at and consider. Different types of hardware, different events, different ways to stay informed through chats and blogs and otherwise. There's just a ton of information here. So I feel like we're kind of at the mouth of the wormhole on this one. There's going to be a lot of time and space to explore from this point forward. So I really can't thank you enough for taking the time this morning to talk to us and share with us all that you're up to, and for continuing to do this stuff in real time. I know we'll see you online.
Sounds good. And I can always give you 10 more resources if you wanted to add a little bit more.
I'm sure you
Just
can.
kidding.
We'll just have to have you on the show again. But wait, there's more. So good. All right. So last but not least, if there was one thing that people who are sitting in their car in traffic right now with their minds all blown and trying to figure out best next step, if you're an educator that's just interested in this space and you haven't applied any of this yet and you just want to start somewhere, is there any recommendation for the best first step?
It's funny that you asked me that, because I wouldn't say that there's one thing that everybody should start off with, because it really varies based upon subject and what you're trying to accomplish in the classroom. So what are your standards? But typically, CoSpace is a very easy one to jump into with creating, but and sharing. You're sharing your 3D world. Nearpod, if you have a subscription, that one's fantastic with implementing the 360s easily, and you don't have to worry about the bandwidth. It's really just an easy tool to implement in the classroom. So I think that there's a couple out there that would probably be some go-tos. OGThat does a great job with lesson plans already implemented. So cool. Easy implementation of that. So I think, again, I'm giving you some various ones, but ultimately there's a variety of ways that this could be used. And I think that you're really honing in on what you're trying to accomplish in that. So in short, no.
That's a long way to know, right there. Okay, well, thank you, Jaime. We will not take even more of your time than we've already been blessed to take this week. But again, just thanks. Thank you for the support you're giving to all of us out there, and here's to where this is all headed.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
New School VR is graciously supported by and recorded live at Concordia University in beautiful Portland, Oregon. For over 100 years, Concordia has been preparing teachers and learning professionals for life and for a living. For more information, visit cu-portland.edu. And by ... an experiential design and technology studio specializing in custom virtual reality and experiential marketing activations that incite wonder and inspire action. See more at ... .io. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe on iTunes or through your favorite podcast delivery app. Visit us online at newschoolvr.com, and thanks for listening. I'm your host, Pinky Gonzalez, and this is New School VR.
This VR podcast is dope.